after, let me say, after this port city construction is over, what will you do with that whole set of people? How will you employ them? So, moving to my next point, this topic suggests the word achieving. When you achieve something, it is yours. It is yours forever. But what happens in this rapid economic growth after a small amount of time? It is not yours, ladies and gentlemen. So the next thing is global trend versus our solution to this problem. This is my favorite clash point because they came here and told that we should grow fast because the people are unsatisfied. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to think we are a country which has an education system that started in 1945 and now you are talking about global trend. How is that even possible? So what we suggested is employment that engulfs education. We wanted to incorporate education into employment, and this is how we are going to employ, and this is how we are going to increase the amount of employment in Sri Lanka. So what we want is development, not decoration. What we want is a solution, not a remedy. We want a growth that is for everyone, not for a small amount of people. We should know our worth as Sri Lankans. We should know the difference between what we are getting and what we deserve. Thank you.
It's unfortunate that side government expects us to come out here and defend what the Sri Lankan government is doing right now. We clearly told you in our first speech itself that yes, we understand the fact that the Sri Lankan government is selling off its resources, but that is not the right way to go. Because we see countries like the United States and China, which are in developed states right now, which didn't have to sell off their resources, right? They came up here and accused us in their first speech itself that the only way of achieving rapid economic growth is by selling your resources, which they kept on harping about in the, until the end of their speeches. So at the end of the day, what you need to understand, that is not necessarily true. Just because the Sri Lankan government does that, that doesn't make it true. You have countries like the United States, you have countries like China, which are developed right now, which can go out there and compete with any country in the world with its economic strength, which didn't necessarily sell out its resources, right? So we don't believe what the Sri Lankan government is doing is right, and we don't believe that we should defend it. They told us that we defend Port City, but no, we came and said what the government of Sri Lanka is doing is wrong in our very first speech. They accuse us of not telling us how we are going to work. So side government really needs to understand, really needs to learn how to listen to while we speak, right? Because that's what our whole second argument was about, right? We came out here and told you about how our welfare project is going to work, how exactly our system is going to work. Whereas them, on their side of the house, never really told us about how employment, how employing all these people is going to solve all these problems. Because look, let's take it in an extremely basic sense. You have degrees like a marine biology degree or an astrophysics degree, right? And in countries like Sri Lanka, you don't necessarily have the proper jobs for these kind of things, right? Why? Because the government is not is employing people for the jobs we have right now, and not investing in rapid development, which will give actually people the jobs that they deserve, right? Because so a person with a PhD in astronomy or marine biology will get the salary of a normal scientist. We don't believe that is right. People should get the salary that they deserve, and to do this, you need to invest your money in other avenues. How do you invest and by investing your money in other avenues, you do achieve rapid economic growth. So where did this debate clash today? This debate boiled down to one massive clash point about a basic cost-benefit analysis, where both sides presented their cases and the one that gives the most benefits wins this debate. Right. So they wanted it slow and steady. We tell you slow and steady is not going to work in developing countries. Why isn't it going to work in developing countries? Because we told you that in countries like Sri Lanka, you have government changes going on and off in every 5 years. So look, you can't, when you take it slow and steady in countries like Sri Lanka, you can't have a steady rate of employing people because governments keep changing. So what do you mean by rapid economy? By rapid economic growth, we mean you're going to achieve development within a short period of time. They tell us that there's not enough time to do so. But we tell you countries like Singapore achieved development at the end of the day through a short period of time. Countries like Singapore in 1970 was a slum, but by the 1980s, countries like Singapore was one of the most developed countries in the world. So you understand that it's a problem of the political system of developing countries, and it's not something wrong with rapid economy, because with the right people in the right hands, you can achieve rapid economic growth, and through that you can get what you need. So, right, then they came up here and talked about selling off resources. We tell you we are not fine with selling off your country's resources. We need the country's resources in order to develop. Also, then they had this whole idea of how high level of employment is going to develop a country. We tell you that is not the case. What if a person with a lot of qualification gets a job in an avenue where in an avenue which is like beneath his level, right? He doesn't get paid the salary that he needs. They tell that this makes their life better. We tell you this doesn't make their life better, right? Because they deserve a salary of 50,000, but they only get paid 20,000. How does this necessarily make sure that their quality of life is upheld? Whereas on our side of the house, we tell you that once you make sure, go out there and give these people welfare until this rapid economic growth is achieved, that the rapid economic growth is achieved, that we can necessarily make this dream come true. Also, then they tell us that people are not going to be doing anything. They're just going to be sitting around and yawning while we just pay them. We tell you that is not the case, right? These people, as we told you in our second argument, we have a welfare project where until we achieve this rapid economic growth within a short period of time, we will be investing a bit of our money on these people, whereas the majority of the money will be invested in other avenues which will necessarily benefit the country as a whole. Then also they talk about alcoholism. Alcoholism is a problem that exists even in countries like the United States, even in countries like China, right? We don't necessarily believe that this is something that comes up with employment, but rather a problem that exists. So also then you have then they come up and they talk about things like poverty. We tell things like poverty is going to be solved on our side of the house, where people actually get the jobs they deserve, where people actually get paid what they deserve, right? Because right now in Sri Lanka, that doesn't happen, right? People aren't given the freedom to choose the avenue of their jobs because they do not have those jobs in Sri Lanka. But what you can do on our side of the house is you can invest money in these fields and thus giving these people the jobs they deserve. Government failed to prove to the house today on any level whatsoever as to how just keeping employing people, giving them the same salary that they don't deserve is going to improve their quality of life. Because that's what they kept saying in their whole speech, in their whole case, that they're going to improve the quality of life. So it's up to you to decide which side of the house improves the quality of life, and since we do it better, we urge you to side with us. Thank you.
Let me simplify things for the House today. The question in this debate was which side was more capable of creating a better quality of life for the people of Sri Lanka or for the people of the country that we are talking about, right? Side proposition's way of going about this. They wanted to make sure that people have money in hand and therefore people have a better life. What's the problem with this? The way they want to make sure that these people have money in hand is to create this facade, to create this image of people being employed by giving them jobs that they may not necessarily want to do, by giving them jobs by creating a workforce. See, they tell us that they want to create this workforce like they did in Korea in the 1960s. They completely ignore the fact that you have two completely different demographics. They completely ignore the fact that the kind of workforce you have in Sri Lanka is different. They say just because it worked in Korea in the 1960s, it might probably work in Sri Lanka right now. We don't think that we can simply accept that, right? Next up, they tell us that things like drugs and alcohol are caused by unemployment. Not necessarily. See, the problem with side proposition is that they fail to listen a lot. When I talked to you in my second argument about poverty and how that caused a lot of these problems that they talk about, they completely ignore that. They keep on ranting about unemployment instead of trying to listen to the arguments that we are making for the House today, right? Understand that at the end of the day, while they might be solving unemployment, they're not necessarily solving the problem of poverty. People are still going to be poor since you haven't achieved economic growth of any sort. So even if they are employed, that doesn't mean that they're leading happy lives. That simply means that they have something that they can call a job, nothing more, nothing less. The other problem with side proposition is that they have a tendency to make assumptions, right? They tell us that rapid economic growth is impossible because you have political instability. But apparently, their plans to create better education, their plans to create a more skilled workforce will work regardless of this political instability. What guarantee do we have for this? Their word. And we don't think that we can simply take their word and make whatever assumptions that they tell us to make. Next up, they tell us that the only way to create employment, to create rapid economic growth is to sell off resources, to make the port city project and have Chinese take over Sri Lanka, right? Now, again, there's this problem of them not listening to us. We told you in our second argument itself that, look, we are going to invest in STM fields, we are going to incentivize investors, and the reason that the Chinese are in Sri Lanka is because we don't have enough economic growth, and we have to constantly apply to them for international aid to make sure that they come in here and do our construction and whatever for us, right? They didn't listen to Tisru's third argument. They didn't respond to that at the end of the day. See, what happens with side proposition is that they keep on assuming that we say things instead of actually listening to the arguments that we are making, and instead of actually listening to the systems that we propose. These problems where they talk to us about how exactly they are going to create jobs by creating a skilled workforce. At the end of the day, having a skilled workforce doesn't work if you don't have some place for this workforce to spend their skills, right? We tell you that creating a skilled workforce might have worked in the 1960s, but it does not work now at the end of the day. This argument about how when you have money in hand, you have a better life doesn't work either, right? Because if you don't have the proper infrastructure to spend it on, they tell us that having infrastructure, having rapid economic growth is simply a delusion. It's not a delusion, right? The money that you have in hand is absolutely useless if you have nowhere to spend that money on. If you don't have proper services that you can achieve by getting that money. At the end of the day, side proposition completely ignores the development of a country. They tell us that growth and development are two completely different things, but we don't think that's the case, right? Because when GDP and these quantitative measures increase, the development and the infrastructure of a country naturally increases along with it. That is how economics work. We thought that they had a basic understanding of that, unfortunately. So look, at the end of the day, we've showed you that we'll be creating a better quality of life. We've showed you that we'll be creating a more stable source of income for people. We've showed you that we'll be creating better sources of infrastructure for these people. And we've showed you that we'll be creating better job opportunities for these people. And most importantly, we've showed you how exactly we are going to do this. Where on side proposition side, they've simply asked you to make more and more assumptions. And that is why you need to side with side opposition.
For delivering your reply. Now we call upon the government speaker to deliver his reply.
So, honorable judicator, members of the House, a good day to you all once again. So, we gave you an example of how Korea has grown, how they've based their educational system on skill, and how they've grown as a country. And what does side opposition say? They implemented it in the 1960s. We're not like that right now. Well, let me tell you something. They implemented that in the 1960s, and they have grown as a nation, and they have won the race. And where are we right now? We have not implemented it still in the 2000s, and we are facing solution. We are facing this problem right now, and we are not growing as a country. And let me tell you why. And let me tell you why we should want this debate. So in the motion inside proposition, we have addressed our current problems. Let me tell you something. 185 projects started in January in 2018, out of which 146 of them were abandoned by December. And do you know why, ladies and gentlemen? It is simply because that we do not have the far sight. We do not have the long-term view to actually think about these projects, not to actually think about rapid economic development. We do not have the far sight to think about ourselves. And let me tell you something. We have answered the questions who, what, when, where, and why. We have told you by accepting this motion is what we need right now. We've given you examples. We've given you substantive. And as to our substantive, removing barriers, growth as a nation, and delusion, that is rapid economic growth. We've backed our facts up with examples. We've given you examples from the current, within our country. We've given you examples from the world. And yet, what side proposition comes here and tells us without giving a single example, they say that their solution is better, and that is where we find they contradict themselves. And they came up here. They told us, okay, rapid economic country, we're going to invest in science, we're going to invest in commerce, etc., and we're going to develop our country within 5 years. Well, let me ask you something. So remember that port city we started a few years ago? So how is that working out for you? Has it been developed within 5 years of our country? Has only one government faced that problem? And let me tell you, asking now, if we do not learn from this, who are we? And yet they have the contingency, they have the integrity to come up here and say, we will finish developing within 5 years because we are a superpower. We can do anything we want. Well, let me tell you something. There are problems we face. There are things that we can't go forward in, and we've even given you clear examples of that. We've not only given ourselves as an example, we've given countries like Iran, Iraq, where problems such as poverty, problems such as inequality of income, regional inequality, drugs, abuse, all of these are problems. And they came here and tell, okay, we don't need to do anything about that. What we need to do right now is close the bars, close the doors of the bars, and they're not thinking about the growth of the country, they're not thinking about what they're thinking is simple, illiterate, illogical response to a sincere question, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why we believe we won that substantive, and that is why we believe that you should side with us. And as to what we've asked in question, as to what we've standed for, so we asked a simple question, right? Right, you say about rapid economic growth, okay, you think you're giving examples, you think you're substanting it, well, let me ask you something. How is it going to become rapid economic, how is it going to be economic development? What is your guarantee of sustainability that what you get is you're going to keep it? Well, let me tell you something, there have been examples over and over in our country where we get something really fast, we want something really fast, we have it for like a day and the next day it's gone. In the countries come, countries take it, and we lose our economy as a whole. We told you the threats, the bad examples that we have because of this rapid economy. We've told you how we've gone back centuries of development in the name of rapid economic growth, and as to why we should not follow it. And they came up here and told us, and another thing, they said, okay, what we need right now, because Sri Lanka is badly developed, because we need countries backing us up, we essentially need countries backing us up like China and India. Well, let me tell you something, you know the 12th century, like really back in our history, no one backed us up. We accelerated as a country, we were on the top, we were on the peak, we were the best in the world, and look at us now. We're simply arguing here, sitting on the stage arguing here, seeing the emotion, a topic that we should have already accelerated, or something that Korea has done in the 1960s, and we are still arguing on it right now. If that doesn't tell you about us, if that doesn't tell you how short-sighted we are as a nation, well, I don't know what will. And as to these points, we've clearly given you examples, substantiated examples, given you why we should accept this motion. Let me tell you one thing, that teaching a man to fish is what we need right now. It is what Sri Lanka needs right now. It is what all developing countries need right now. And that is why we believe side proposition has clearly won the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for delivering your reply. Now, let us give the judges, the adjudicators, a little moment to pass their decision. I kindly request the teams to again shake their hands.
Parliamentarian Siddharthan sir and the principals of both schools and the teams involved in the debate and the teachers in charge and the audience. So it's the time that to announce the results of the debate. Actually, the debate is something different from the other mode of expressions. It has some features that we have to take into account. The debate should be very informative, persuasive, and well reasoned. Beyond it is order, and that has more dynamic in a sense. So beyond this, the features that we take into account in making decisions, then the criteria that given to us, 3 criteria that was given to us to make judgments here: content, style, and the strategies there. So that is, we tried our best to choose the best out of the best. That's what we considered all aspects of the debate. The teams, they put forward their ideas and the placement of arguments and the counter arguments. Then actually the both teams, they were well prepared. Only the problems they had in the content is there. So we had to focus of the debate, the topic, that is the developing countries where the high level of employments, and as well as that how they contribute to the rapid economic growth. So this is the debate. So how they place the arguments, that's the way they presented to justify the arguments, all were considered by the judges. As a result, we come to a decision, that is the proposition team that wins. That because of their their presentation was very effective, very informative and persuasive, and highly impressive the audience, as well as that is more dynamic that the way they present their facts. Then the best debate we selected also from the proposition team, that is the third speaker actually. He placed his arguments the way, that is how they respond to the opposition teams that taking into account his facts. Then he's very dynamic and he was very well reasoned, that is the way that he presents the facts. So this is our results. So thank you all for inviting us for the debate and to be the judges. Thank you.
Everyone for being patient and calm and collected. Now, the awards wouldn't be awarded here. It'll be given in the basketball tournament when it finishes. So thank you very much for